Welcome back, viewers. Now let's get to the news in detail. President Donald Trump has said the United States is not seeking regime change in Iran. Trump also backed Japan's offer to help broker possible dialogue between the U.S. and Iran. More now about Trump's visit to Japan in this report.
The US-Iran tension has been rising since President Trump withdrew from the 2015 nuclear deal 2 years ago. His recent military deployment in the Gulf region to counter perceived threats from Tehran added fuel to the fire. Trump is on a 4-day trip to Japan where he struck a relatively dovish tone on Iran. In a joint news conference with Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, Trump said he is open to new negotiations with Iran, and he said he did not want the situation to worsen.
And I know so many people from Iran. These are great people. It has a chance to be a great country with the same leadership. And I'm not looking to hurt Iran at all. I'm looking to have Iran say no nuclear weapons. We have enough problems in this world right now with nuclear weapons. No nuclear weapons for Iran. And I think we'll make a deal. I think Iran has tremendous economic potential.
President Trump sounded a similarly conciliatory tone over North Korea. The US leader described North Korea's Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un as a very smart man.
I talked to him a lot about it, and he's very much into the fact that he believes, like I do, that North Korea has tremendous economic potential, like perhaps few other developing nations anywhere in the world. And I think that he is looking to develop that way. He knows that with nuclear, that's never going to happen. Only bad can happen. He understands that. He is a very smart man. He gets it well.
President Trump also backed Shinzo Abe's proposal to continue talks with Pyongyang.
I feel I have to meet face-to-face with Chairman Kim without attaching any preconditions and exchange frank views with him. President Trump said he will give full support needed for that process.
President Trump's visit to Japan has also been shadowed by trade tensions. The US president kept up pressure on Tokyo to cut its trade surplus with America. Trump said he expects an agreement in August that would benefit both economies. He also said Japan has agreed to purchase 105 new F-35 stealth fighter jets. On the trade dispute with China, the US president said there's very good chance of clinching a trade deal with Beijing.
Well, North Korea has rejected U.S. Security Advisor John Bolton's allegation that its missile test violated UN resolutions. Pyongyang said that Bolton is trying to incite a war with his comments. The North's foreign ministry said giving up missile tests means giving up the right to self-defense. It called Bolton's remarks against the tests extremely ignorant. Contradicting Bolton, President Donald Trump has dismissed concerns about Pyongyang's missile launch. In a tweet, Trump called the missiles small weapons. Well, Saudi Arabia has invited Qatar to attend emergency Arab summits in Mecca on May 30th. Riyadh has called for 2 summits to discuss attacks on its oil assets and U.S. military deployments in the Middle East. Qatar's foreign ministry said Emir Sheikh Tamim received an invitation from the Saudi King Salman to attend the meetings. Earlier this week, Qatar said it will not attend the conferences as it had not received an invite. This is the first time since 2017 that Qatar and Saudi Arabia have engaged positively on the diplomatic front. Both GCC members have been locked in a low-level conflict, sometimes called a second Arab Cold War. Well, centrist parties have lost their majority in the European Parliament. Far-right and Greens made big gains, I should say, according to provisional results of the EU elections. More in this report.
3 of the world's top 8 economies and 2 permanent members of the UN Security Council contest the EU elections. This term's showdown came to a close with some unexpected results. Upsetting the power division, the dominant centrist bloc lost its combined majority in the 751-seat legislative body. Nonetheless, it still held on to more than 43% of the vote. Leading with 178 seats, the centre-right European People's Party is likely to form a coalition. The centre-right's Manfred Weber offered to compromise with pro-EU forces among socialists, liberals and Greens.
There is no stability, there is no stable majority without the EPP. And that's why the EPP is ready for compromise, ready for talks to each other. But we have to work together. That is our main message.
The Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats followed with 147 seats. European Socialist-led candidate Franz Timmermans also suggested a coalition with progressive parties.
My offer is on the table. Let's sit together with progressive forces in this Parliament. Let's try and find a programme for the next 5 years that will prepare Europe for the 30 years to come.
Tipping the power balance, the far right with the national narrative scored major gains in the EU polls. Nigel Farage's Brexit party stormed to victory in Britain. In France, President Emmanuel Macron lost to Marine Le Pen's party with an estimated 23% of votes cast. Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini said Europe is changing after his party topped the Italy vote with 33%.
Not only is the League the first party in Italy, but Marine Le Pen is the first party in France. In the UK, Nigel Farage is first. So Italy, France, England, it's the sign of a Europe that is changing.
The turnout was the highest it stood in 20 years, as compared to 42.6% in 2014.
Well, joining us now from Brussels is our correspondent, Kevin Ozebek. Kevin, thanks for joining us. Well, the dominance, Kevin, of these major center-right and center-left parties has been challenged like never before. Is this more of a protest vote, do you think, or genuinely a major political shift in the EU, as Salvini has said?
Yeah, no, what I think this is an actual, real, true political shift, and that's because those two main parties, the center-right and the center-left grouping that controlled the European Parliament for not just years, but for decades, they really just don't resonate with many EU voters. There's a lot of Europeans who say the status quo establishment parties just don't reflect their views anymore. And maybe that's because socially they're becoming more conservative, or economically they're becoming more liberal. Whatever the situation may be, they just don't think that those parties are what's working for this continent anymore. And that's playing out both in EU politics as well as the various national politics and the national campaigns that happen across Europe. I think the UK is a really great example there. The Conservative Tories, the Labour Party were just absolutely obliterated in these elections. And who were the winners instead? Well, the New Brexit Party as well as the Lib Dems. So we're seeing a real political shift here. Also, Germany is another great example. The Greens just surged ahead. They got about 22% of the vote. They got the second most votes, or the second highest voting tally out of the parties there in Germany. So this isn't just a protest vote. There's real change happening here in Europe.
And, you know, this has had major, hasn't it, Kevin, on sitting governments. A snap election has been called for now in Greece, and questions are now being, asked about the future of Germany's ruling coalition. Where else have these results have such a deep impact?
I would say there's been a very big impact in France, and that's because French President Emmanuel Macron really pegged these elections as a referendum on him and his government and his opponent, his political nemesis, Marine Le Pen of the party formerly known as the Front National, now known as the National Rally, also then played right off of that. And she said, if you're not happy with what's happening at the national level, if you're not happy with what President Macron is doing, and if you're a gilet jaune, a yellow vest protester, maybe you should come to my party because we can offer you something different. So we saw national politics in France really play out in these EU elections. Now, what's all done and dusted in France? Marine Le Pen did get the most votes, her party did get the most votes, but she actually got a decline over 5 years ago during the last EU election. So there's a little bit of a nuance there. This isn't just a black and white story. It's actually a little bit more complicated than that, because some of the other parties, like the Greens, also did quite well in France. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it was just an anti-EU vote going towards her. We're seeing all these little parties across Europe really get propelled and propped up in these elections.
And then finally, let's contextualize the Greens and them winning, because they've done very well, obviously, and this is following climate change protests across the European Union by young people. Is climate change now an issue capable of even swaying national elections in EU states?
Well, we'll see, but based on what we saw last night in Germany, it looks like that could be the case. Voters were saying that climate change and climate issues were the #1 issue when they were heading into the polls for these EU elections in Germany. Also, what you need to keep in mind when it comes to how this all played out in Germany, the reason the Greens had such a huge surge and there was a green wave in Germany is because there was a very high turnout in the youth vote, and they went for the Greens. So is that going to then be copied in national elections across Europe, in France, in Spain, in the UK? Well, potentially so. We are seeing among voters under 30, they really take the climate issue seriously because they don't want to inherit a planet that is damaged environmentally so beyond repair. So politically speaking, it is becoming a much more important issue here in Europe. And as we saw in Germany, an issue that drives people to the polls.
Very well, Kevin. We appreciate your reporting for us. It was Kevin, our correspondent, speaking to us there from Brussels. Well, as I said there too, Kevin, the Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras has in fact called for snap elections after a resounding defeat to the opposition. Tsipras's leftist Syriza party suffered big losses in the EU parliamentary and local elections. Provisional results have shown Syriza scored less than 24% in the European ballot. Following that setback, Tsipras decided not to push through to a full term, which expires in October. A likely date for the vote is June 30th. New Democracy leader Kyriakos Mitsotakis demanded Tsipras's resignation, saying he had lost the popular mandate. Well, Germany's Social Democrats have bled support in elections in the state of Bremen. The major blow could end their national coalition with Chancellor Angela Merkel's Conservatives. Merkel has called for emergency talks with coalition partners to prevent her government from collapsing. Germany's Social Democrats have said they still want to work with Merkel in the national coalition. Exit polls show a victory for Merkel's party in Bremen with 25% of the vote. The center-left Social Democratic Party won only 24% of the vote. Both the SPD and Merkel's conservative bloc suffered heavy losses in the European elections. Losing to the Greens and the far right further dents the national coalition government in Berlin. Well, the Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz is facing the prospect of being removed from office in a no-confidence vote. The no-confidence vote comes after a video corruption sting that blew up the ruling coalition. Now, due to his choice of coalition partner, the opposition has accused Kurz of being partly to blame. They allege he has failed to seek a viable cross-party solution to this crisis. Following the Social Democrats' call for the motion, the Freedom Party too has hinted it could vote against the chancellor. Kurz will be the first chancellor in post-war Austria to be removed in this fashion if the no-confidence motion succeeds. Elsewhere, China has strongly condemned the meeting between top security officials from the United States and Taiwan. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Lu Kang said the meeting violates Washington's commitment to the One China principle. He said the Taiwan issue is the most important and sensitive factor in the China-US relationship. Kang urged America to properly handle all Taiwan-related issues. Taipei, for its part, has said its national security chief, David Lee, met the U.S. security advisor, John Bolton, to deepen their cooperation. Uzbekistan's Deputy Prime Minister Elyor Ganiyev has arrived in Islamabad on a two-day visit to Pakistan. Ganiyev was received by officials from the Foreign Office at the Nurhan military base. He's accompanied by a high-level delegation, including deputy ministers for investment, trade, and transport. The Deputy Prime Minister will hold talks with the Pakistani leadership on the entire spectrum of bilateral relations. The visit will focus on an economic partnership and enhance possibilities for regional connectivity. Well, Pakistan and China have signed several agreements to enhance bilateral cooperation in a broad range of areas. The agreements have been signed as part of a three-day visit by China's Vice President Wang Qishan. Meanwhile, President Arif Alvi awarded Vice President Wang Pakistan's highest civilian honor. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said the Chinese vice president's visit demonstrates the strength of China-Pakistan ties. Well, in the Middle East, Iran has said it wants balanced relations with its Gulf Arab neighbors and has proposed a non-aggression pact to achieve that. Foreign Minister Javad Zarif also warned of any military or economic aggression, saying it would not be tolerated. During his visit to Baghdad, Zarif was addressing a news conference with his Iraqi counterpart, Mohammed al-Hakim. Zarif called on European states to do more to preserve the 2015 nuclear deal. The Iraqi Foreign Minister Hakim, for his part, said Baghdad rejected the US's unilateral actions. Hakim said Iraq stands with Iran and is willing to act as an intermediary between its neighbor and the United States. Earlier, Iraqi Prime Minister Adel Abdel Mahdi warned of the danger of war during a meeting with Zarif. Well, let's begin this half in Syria, where at least 12 civilians have been killed in airstrikes by government forces in the northwest of that country. A young girl was among those killed. The de-escalation zone in Syria, encompassing northern Hama and Idlib provinces, is witnessing ceasefire violations by multiple parties. War Monitor said that more than 230 civilians have been killed in a spike in the violence since the end of April. The United Nations said that over 200,000 civilians have already been displaced by the upsurge of fighting. The buffer zone was created by Turkey and Russia last September to avert a government offensive. But the region has come under increasing bombardment since Al-Qaeda-linked rebels took control of it in January. Well, in Libya, the commander of Eastern Forces, Khalifa Haftar, has said he will continue fighting until militias in Tripoli lay down their arms. In an interview, Haftar has said his forces are fighting private militias and extremist groups. He hinted at a political solution to the crisis after the armed groups are eliminated. Clashes between Eastern Forces and the UN-recognized Libyan government are raging on the outskirts of Tripoli. According to the World Health Organization, over 500 people have been killed since the beginning of the Tripoli offensive on April 4th. In Sudan, meanwhile, the main opposition group has rejected a call for a two-day general strike. The call was made by a faction of the protest movement amid a deadlock in talks with the military. Meanwhile, the head of Sudan's ruling military council, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, has met with Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in Cairo. This is Burhan's first trip abroad since he took power after the toppling of former President Omar al-Bashir. Protest leaders and the military council are at loggerheads over who should lead a new ruling body. The Filipino President Rodrigo Duterte has ordered the return of garbage to Canada, even if Manila has to pay the shipment costs. Environmentalists have consistently demanded the return of that trash, but this has appeared to have fallen on deaf ears until now. The dispute escalated when Ottawa missed a May 15th deadline imposed by Manila to collect the garbage. Although the junk had been labeled recyclable, tons of waste has been sitting in the Philippines for the last 6 years. Duterte had threatened to dump that trash in Canadian waters, despite Ottawa's assurances that the matter would be taken care of by the end of June. Canada is not the only foreign nation that has been exporting its refuse to the Philippines. In recent months, tons of trash from Australia and Hong Kong have been found in shipping containers at the country's ports. In the United States, at least 2 more people have been killed as a tornado has ripped through the southern Oklahoma state. The death toll due to extreme weather in the U.S. has risen to 6. A twister, which lasted for 5 to 10 minutes, overturned many cars and destroyed a local motel in El Reno district. El Reno Mayor Matt White said that the tornado caused severe damage across the town.
It's a pretty devastating site at this point in time. I will tell you, when I was on the site, I was one of the first ones out there with the chief of police. It's pretty devastating as far as the devastation of the trailer park, of course, and the hotel, the two-story hotel.
Now, hundreds of clowns have taken to the streets of Peru for local Clown Day. The day also marks the death of Tony Periel, a popular clown and circus owner.
With painted faces, donning rainbow wigs, hats, big shoes and red noses, clowns made their way through Lima's downtown. Parading to the rhythm of drums, whistles and singing, the jesters came in all shapes, sizes and emotions. Some even dressed up as clown superheroes. Pixar's Buzz Lightyear from the Toy Story and Pennywise.
Today we are celebrating May 25th, the Day of the Clown, and the truth is that being a clown is to convey joy to all the children of Peru and the world. What we carry in our hearts, we demonstrate and give joy to the children of the world, and the children are not afraid of me. Who says, if they are afraid of me, I will swallow them.
The clowns' procession brought smiles to area residents as well as their fellow clowns.
I've been a clown for 10 years and it's something very significant in my life and my profession, because my profession is to be a clown and bring joy to the public.
The founder of the festival, Tony Periel, was known as the clown of the poor. Clowns simulate Periel's visits Lima neighborhoods in the 1980s to spread joy, carrying colorful tents.
Time now for some business news. Stock markets in Asia have shown mixed trends following US President Donald Trump's Japan visit. By afternoon, the Shanghai Composite had recovered from its earlier slip, while in Hong Kong, the Hang Seng Index is still retreating. Tokyo's Nikkei has risen meanwhile. Over in South Korea, the Kospi traded down 0.28%. Well, Simon Pagenaud has beaten 2016 winner Alexander Rossi to win the 103rd Indianapolis 500. More on that now in this report.
Simon Pagenaud has beaten 2016 winner Alexander Rossi to win the 103rd Indianapolis 500. Simon Pagenaud swept the month of May at Indianapolis Speedway by extended Team Penske's legacy in thrilling fashion. The Frenchman crossed the finish line by 0.2086 of a second ahead of Rossi to bag 18th win for his team. Pagenaud started from pole position and led for more than 100 laps of the 200-lap race on the 2.5-mile oval. The Penske driver passed Rossi on turn 3 of lap 199 to claim the race. Pagenaud says to win the IndyCar race was his childhood dream.
It's a dream come true, a life of trying to achieve this. So I'm just speechless. It's just incredible.
The 35-year-old Frenchman sealed the victory at his 8th attempt. Last year, he came 6th.
Time now to find out what the weather is like around the world. Well, you're all caught up. Thanks very much for watching this bulletin here on Indus News.